Joining me now is Shawn Wallace, the CEO and Chair of Torq Resources. Great to see you again, Shawn.
Good morning. How are you doing?
We're very well and anxious to get some updates from you. So let's start in Chile. You've got the 3 projects, so we'll focus on Margarita for the time being. You've done 3 rounds of drilling. Your team has made a couple of discoveries. So can you give us an update there?
Sure. You know, in those 3 rounds of drilling, we sort of the sort of genesis or evolution of the story for us. We got this project Margarita. It was essentially a green fields project with a small copper oxide operation, if we were sort of a pickup truck size operation at the one end of it. And the premise was that we were going to go after what's the source of this oxide, where's the sulfide source. And we had our initial drill program, and we thought we were looking for an IOCG system, and we drilled about 13 holes. And on the 13th hole, we made a fantastic discovery at a target we now call Faya 13, and we drilled about 90 meters of 0.9 gold and 0.8 copper, 0.7, something like that. And what really shocked us, we expected to get the copper, but was that gold content. So then the next drill program was designed to say, okay, we've made this great discovery, but it's one data point out in space. What could the dimensions of this be? So the second program was designed to see, okay, does this have any girth? Does it have any size potential? And we traced it out over about 800 meters. And so that was great. And then on the third program, so then we said to ourselves, well, you know what we've learned is the top 20 meters of this particular project, the copper's leaked. So copper was what we were using as a pathfinder on our surface work to target the drills. We said, perhaps we've been going about that wrong. Now that we've learned that gold, which is less mobile, doesn't leach as easily, should be this, we could follow that expression at surface. So we reverted back to a grassroots type program. We resoil sampled, did geochem over the entire project again, and came up with the targets that were the rationale for the third drill program, which was not about delineating this first discovery, but rather finding out what else there might be on the project. And in that process, we did make 2 new discoveries, which that was the latest sort of announcement we had about the project. And so the next phase is going to be to go back and see if there's any girth to these particular discoveries. So very exciting times. Every time you go out with a diamond drill, you're asking the earth a question. And so far, we've been really enjoying the answers.
I like that analogy. Very good. Asking the earth a question. Now, you're focusing on 3 corridors there, including Faya 13, which you mentioned, and you've said that you like to be able to delineate maybe a cluster of mineralized bodies. So what's the plan in say first part of 24?
Well, first part of 24, we're going to be focusing on Santa Cecilia. Margarita, as you know, is located at about 1,200 meters. It's a year-round asset. We really got to focus our attention, our capital, and our human resources on Santa Cecilia during the very start of 2024. But come into the summer, you'll see us our summer there, winter, refocusing in at Margarita. So as far as the option agreement goes, we've already done all the requisite work and stuff. So we don't really have a gun to our head when we go back there. And, we want to do all this in deference to the capital markets, managing dilution of the company and sort of the financing windows and environment we find ourselves in. But from a technical perspective, what we're going to do at Margarita is, again, go and follow up on those discoveries. And again, utilize, as you do in any sort of iterative scientific process, use what you learned from the last test and apply that to your going forward. And if the system's working, as you're learning more and more, you become even more efficient with those decisions you make as you go forward, as you gain the comprehension of what exactly is going on under the veneer of the earth.
Okay, Shawn, one more question on Margarita, and we'll get to Santa Cecilia. You said that there is potential for operational synergies with one or potentially more of your neighbors in Chile. Is the ultimate end game to sell to a mid-tier, meaning Margarita, or even a major, or is it more complicated than that?
Yeah, I think it is more complicated than simply that. But in broad strokes, I think those were all valid statements, except for the major part. I really don't think Margarita, and I'd be shocked, and I'd be happy to be shocked, that it will evolve into something that will be meaningful to a major mining company, but that's okay. There's lots of mid-tiers out there looking to grow. And I think that a project like Margarita could find itself in maybe 1 or 2 more rounds of drilling to have substantiated a size that would be quite meaningful and interesting to a mid-tier. The other thing that's probably pretty attractive to a mid-tier is the the low elevation, the access to infrastructure. There's paved roads right almost to the project. We're only an hour's drive, hour and a half drive from a town of 400,000 people, Copiapó, which is really a mining center in Chile. There's all sorts of good, and there's mines all around us. So yeah, there's other IOCGs. There's companies that specialize in mining those. I mean, there's some obvious suitors, people that it would be not a big stretch for them to buy something like this. But you're correct. We're looking for someone to purchase it. We are a junior exploration company. We're not going to reinvent ourselves as miners. We'll do what we do best, and then part of the food chain, sort of allow the mining folks to come along and take it away from us and carry it into the mining zone. So that's definitely our strategy.
And then with Santa Cecilia, you've described it as sort of a frozen in time, a time machine, hasn't been drilled for decades. And you also have major players nearby with big deposits. So that, of course, is intriguing, as you've said. So after your initial drill program, are you confident in getting closer to delineating what you're actually sitting on there?
Yeah, so I think delineation, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. I think I'd rather more characterize it as we're still very much in the discovery phase. I mean, we only have 2 drill holes in it ourselves, and there was only 2 holes in it, at least looking for porphyry targets. You said it's just frozen, as you mentioned, the frozen in time aspect. Way back in the day, but when this project was first being explored, it wasn't being explored for the porphyry potential because, of course, back then they hadn't discovered that there were porphyries in this part of the Maricunga, and so it was AngloGold, but back then was drilling for near surface epithermal gold deposits. There were some really fantastic ones were being discovered at that time, and they drilled 50 holes or some number of holes and delineated this oxide cap that we still have there, and who knows, it might get folded into whatever we discover underneath it. The project was frozen in time. We're very much in a discovery. We spent the last year, we really only got boots in the ground about a year ago. We made the acquisition of the project. We got Goldfields endorsement financing. Then we went and got a community agreement, which took several months, but we've got a 7-year community agreement. Last year, about right near the end of the year, right around now, we actually got some boots on the ground. And since the project's been frozen in time, no modern sort of prepping work or so you don't just want to go out there. Drilling is expensive there. So we needed to go back to basics, do the geochem, do the mapping. And lo and behold, we discovered 4 or 5 other porphyry targets or 4 other mineralized porphyry targets, some of them which daylight. So, we're very much we got to go drill all those before and find out where the economic center of gravity is on this project prior to doing any kind of delineation or defining. We're very much a discovery story.
All right, fair enough. Now, still with Santa Cecilia, one of the things you said that you like about it is that you've got Newmont and Barrick as neighbors, and you kind of have a built-in exit strategy, so to speak, as you say. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the lay of the land, so to speak, literally, where they're situated, and you look at the kind of district here, I mean, you've seen these things happen in other camps where, they've got, I think, about 50 million ounces in their inventory, 17 billion copper, some sort of moly. If we can find another 25 million ounces, and if it could be closer to surface and higher grade, it could sort of tip the scales. In particular, the Norte Abierto joint venture. If you look at Caspicho and Santa Cecilia, they're sort of those sort of 2 things have less operational synergies than one would want, because there's a small mountain range in between, and it starts to get expensive if you're looking for common sort of facilities, sharing tailings, processing plants, et cetera. But between where our best looking targets are and where Caspiche is, there are none of those sort of natural boundaries, if you will. And the sort of geometry, at least as we can see, it's a nice gentle valley between the 2. You could lots of room for that sort of infrastructure that could be synergistic. And because of the proximity, I think when this area gets developed, it's going to be nobody's going to develop Santa Cecilia without North Sierras are going, and vice versa. They all sort of have to go together. But the great thing about this is why the opportunity is so huge is this is the kind of camp that's meeting to the biggest companies. And we talked to Margarita that was like a mid-tiers thing. This is very much a majors camp. Very much, because the capex is going to be huge. We're going to have to bring desal plant to bring the water up, et cetera, et cetera. So often you've seen these kind of opportunities get developed by a consortium of majors. And Goldfields owns a big piece of us. They're quite keen on the area. You've got Newmont and Barrick. So really, the players are sort of already loosely in place that could put together such a financing consortium for the ultimate mine development here.
You mentioned Goldfields there owning about 15% of Torq. Last year they invested $15 million at $1 per share. What is the significance of that in terms of having that kind of a stamp of approval from a big player like that?
Well, I mean, it's good. I think it particularly in this environment where juniors are not receiving a great deal of love. It's good to have that endorsement. We expected that, having done this for a long time. I think it has, they're very collaborative with us, although it's not part of our arrangement in an official sense. We sit and we talk about how you would develop it. They're very keen to get into South America, and I think they've telegraphed that to the market and investors and so forth. So that's fantastic. And they've just been a great partner so far, and they like how we do things. And the fact that they've really bought into how we're going to explore this, which is putting science first, has been a great relationship so far. The other thing that is impactful now is that they paid a premium to buy that stock. We were trading at 60 some cents. You don't see that happening a whole lot to juniors right now. Usually when you go to raise money, you get a little discount. And so having I think that was probably the greatest significance to it, was that we were able to raise that capital, minimize our dilution, and bring in a high quality partner.
Lastly, Shawn, in September, you were part of our live copper show. And one of the things you said was that during your career, you've never seen such what you call unprecedented apathy in the junior mining space. Fast forward to now, things don't seem too much better. But another thing you did say is that because you've been around and you've seen it, eventually the market will turn. So what is your view now, and what do you think 24 is going to look like?
Yeah, I can answer that question differently, probably depending on the day around right now, or the hour for that matter. Things are certainly not following typical sort of signs and so forth that you've come to get used to over the last, I have at least myself, for the last 35 years. I think we're still in, if I were to look at my crystal ball, and this is, cracked and foggy as anyone else's, I would say that 2024 is going to be better than 2023. But not as good as a lot of companies, sadly, out of desperation, want or need it to be. I think financial conservatism, cutting costs, which we've done an extensive cost cutting program here internally and in all our offices, just to keep costs down. I think you still need to be cautious, but I think we can be cautiously optimistic at this point.
Well, great for the update, Shawn. We appreciate it. Enjoy the holidays, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too. Been a pleasure. Thank you.
Shawn Wallace, CEO and Chair of Torq Resources. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.